You haven't won on the road yet this year. Is that an important milestone to kind of get in the right column?
Definitely, it's something that we're gonna have to, find a way to get past. Obviously, like you said, we haven't won yet. A L and a tie. So, got to find a way to go out there and be at our best on the road, and get over that hump.
Coach LaFleur was saying the Cardinals have been in so many close games. I think every one of their games has been decided by a touchdown or less, and obviously the last few have been losses. Um, I know you don't generally overlook teams. Is there any concern about, hey, their record's down, we wouldn't see them for who they could be?
No, definitely not. I think the Cardinals are a really good team. Watching their defense throughout the week, I think they do a lot of good things. Obviously, we played them last year, and I think that defense has got better since last year. So, I don't think, like you said, I don't think we ever overlook any teams. But like you said, they've been in some close games. Haven't, came out with the outcomes they wanted. But, I still think they're a really good team. And, definitely, we're focused on us this week and going out there and trying to get a win on the road.
Jordan, you mentioned after the game Sunday that you kind of came into the season wanting to use your legs more. I'm curious, once you make that decision, like I want to add this to my game more, what's next? Like how do you decide when is the right time to use your legs to make plays and when is the right time not to?
Yeah, I think it's all just a feel thing, in the pocket. Getting to the top of your drop and, really just feeling where the holes are at in the lanes to kind of get out. But it's also just understanding the concepts, understanding when you get to the top of your drop, do I feel like this is gloved and, I might have a lane to, get out, or do I feel like I have the throw? So I'm always trying to find ways to get the ball in my hand and make those throws. But sometimes the defense, has a good coverage on. It's just finding ways to escape through the pocket. But I think it's just understanding where the holes are at in some of these rushes and, how teams rush each week. And, if teams have beat them on getting out in some scramble drills and quarterbacks using their legs and kind of what's their plan to stop that.
Is that film work or is that something you kind of make in the moment decision when you're dropping back?
It is in the moment, it's all definitely in the moment, dropping back and just feeling those things. But I think throughout the week there is some, when you look at film, you just kind of feel how do they rush? Are they high rushers? Do they kind of spin out of some of these moves? How's the interior guys? Do they get out? Are they playing over top of the quarterback and giving you lanes to escape? So it's all about just watching that throughout the week, and then once like you said, just getting in the game and feeling it out.
Is it always easier to get scramble yards against man coverage, or can you get scramble yards against zones as well, or is it that much harder?
You can definitely get scramble yards in zones, but I do think it is easier versus man. When everybody's guarding the receiver, looking at their man, and not having eyes on you. It just depends on the coverage, whether they got hole players and guys with vision on the quarterback, spies, things like that. But zone, I feel like everybody's usually watching the quarterback with eyes and vision on the quarterback. So it does make it harder sometimes. But I think man is the the kind of the opportune times.
Jordan, how nice was it for the most part, other than the one series, to have your offensive line sort of the same every time?
No, it was great. I think that's something that we've been bouncing around with. Obviously injuries have been a part of that, and then just kind of moving guys around, giving guys the best fit. So, I think anytime you get the starting five out there, you're in good hands. And obviously, J-Mo and Sean, they've been rotating in, doing different things. So, I always got confidence in all these guys, no matter who's in there. But, it is nice to be able to settle down and just get some consistency in there.
Golden has made a couple of big plays in crunch time the last couple of games now. Just what have you seen from him just in terms of his growth since the start of the season up until now?
Yeah, I think he's been making some big-time plays. I think last game, two of those catches were real crucial, both on third down. So, I think he's been a guy that has shown his consistency throughout practice with his ability to catch. And I think it's just about trying to get him the ball more. And I think he's made the most of every opportunity that the ball's come his way. So just continue to keep trying to find him. But, he definitely made two really big plays in that game. So, shout out to him.
Jordan, looking at the last game, even when the Bengals scored, the offense didn't panic, was able to, put together another drive, especially late in game. How crucial, just beneficial is it for the offense? Just to, you could say, have that type of success to see, if you need to do it late in the game, you can.
No, it's very crucial. Those are the moments when you got to be at your best. It's a tight game, getting in the fourth quarter. You got to find ways to go execute and stay on the field and put up points. Whatever the situation is, if you need a touchdown, if you need a field goal, if it's a 4-minute drive where you just got to stay on the field, So I think those have been two. I think with this last week, with the Dallas week, I think it's been huge for our offense to be able to go out there and answer the call. So I think it's something that'll just keep building confidence, and we'll keep finding the right plays for these situations and things like that. But I think that's huge. That's what you plan for as offense. We do all the work in different 2-minute situations throughout OTAs and training camp to be ready for those moments. And it's nice that we've been able to succeed.
Is there a certain mentality it takes to be successful in those situations, just collectively as a unit, the mentality it takes in those crunch time drives?
Yeah, you just got to be confident, and that's when I feel like the pressure is at the highest point. You got to go out there and make a play. So I think just not let the moment get too big for anybody. Just go out there, treat it like another drive, and just go out there and make plays. But that's definitely, Matt talked about it before the game, is when you need your best players to be at their best. I think guys have done that.
Kind of go back to Matthew for a minute. You also went 2 on 4th down in the Dallas game. Obviously, that was a do-or-die play there. Where does that confidence come from to go to a guy who obviously hasn't shown it a whole lot in games to that point?
Yeah, no, I think it's all the stuff that he's done since he got here in practice, that gives you that confidence in him. Obviously, sometimes the game doesn't always show, but, it's all the work he's put in through behind the scenes, understanding the game plan inside and out, and then just going out there and making plays in practice. And then, I tell him all the time, stuff's going to keep translating to the game, so just keep staying confident and going out there and executing.
So he's caught the ball really well since he got here. Would you ever look at a guy in a key situation and say, you know what, I'm not sure that he's going to catch the ball and go elsewhere, or are you just going to throw the ball to whoever's open? Like, it's not obviously not a question.
No, definitely. I always got confidence in all my guys that's out there. I'm never going to have that kind of doubt in the back of my mind. At the end of the day, like I always say, I read plays true and try and go where the coverage is kind of telling me to go. But I always got confidence in my guys no matter what. You got to go out there and make that play. So, I expect guys to have the same confidence in me every time.
Jordan, you've referenced confidence a few times. How important is it for yourself and for this offense? And does it ever ebb and flow at your level at this stage of the season?
Definitely. There's always, highs and lows. I think you put a couple not so great drives together, you're going to be feeling a certain way, about how we're executing, the plays we're running, and what the defense is doing. So it's always highs and lows, but I think that's just part of the mental game. It's trying to stay confident, trying to stay focused on just that next play mentality. If things haven't been great, how do we find ways to overcome those things? And if things are going great, how do you keep making them execute? So it's all the mental part of the game where you just got to stay confident.
What do you need to be aware of with a guy like Budda Baker?
Man, Budda, you just got to always be ready, know where he's at. But, the type of defense they play is a very, I think, unique style. Not too many teams do it. And they give Budda, some freedom to roam around and to insert in different ways and to blitz and just present you a lot of different looks where you never really know where he's going to be at. So you just got to know where he's at and understand that at any time he can drop down to the left side or the right side. He can drop deep. He can blitz. So just got to stay aware of him. And he's definitely, one of their best players, a very impact player. So just knowing where he's at.
Going back to your legs, have you decided how much more part of your game you'd like that to ultimately become?
No, man. I think it's just one of those things where, I've talked about making it an emphasis coming in this year, trying to do it more. But I think some of this stuff just naturally happens, throughout the game. And obviously, there's stuff you go back and look and say, man, I could clean this up, or keep looking downfield, keep my eyes downfield with the receivers, working scramble drill and things like that, or just when to actually take off and run. But, I never try and, say, hey, this is how much I got to scramble in the game, or, this is what I got to do, but just kind of let the game play out.
Was that last scramble that you had Sunday one of those areas to maybe clean up? You didn't take a hit, but it looked like you might have had a chance to dive for the first down on the film. What did you see?
Yeah, no, that's one of those things. Yeah, you look at it and see what you can do better. In the moment, I felt like I was running to the side, and I was looking at the sticks, trying to see if I was going to get it, and I didn't feel that linebacker. He was kind of, staying over the top, wasn't really driving on me as hard. So, my mindset in that moment was I wanted to keep the clock running and try and stay in bounds. Obviously, looking back on it, you think, man, if you dive forward or do something, you can try and pick up that first down. But, in the moment, I was trying to stay in bounds and, wasn't even really thinking, what if we don't get this third down? How's the situation going to play out? But it's one of those things, you just got to learn from it. And, maybe next time I'll be diving forward or something.
We know you're a guy that wants to throw first, right? How much gratification is there when you break some tackles and show that you do have that athletic component?
Man, it's nice. It's definitely nice. I think a lot of guys sleep on me in this locker room. I always joke around that I'm a 20-mile-per-hour guy, but I have a couple little moves I got. But no, it's definitely nice whenever you can use the legs, and it just feels good. Being able to go out there and make plays with the legs. And like I said before, I think it does put more pressure on the defense to always never count you out with your legs.
Who's doubting your abilities as a runner?
Who's that?
Who's doubting your
Man, I'm not going to throw anybody on the bus. It's a lot of people. I have this daily conversations with guys, but no, it's all everybody just poking fun.
When I was watching Sunday, and you get 18 carries for Josh Jacobs and 5 receptions, besides trying to get the ball into one of your best ball carriers' hands, do you also think that the benefit is that it's a few less hits for your great ball carrier when you can pass it to him in the flats, just a few less times up the middle and less hits on that running back?
Yeah, I think there's going to be hits regardless. I think Josh is a guy that we're not too worried about that. I think he's a guy who loves the contact and is always looking to be the aggressor. But like you said, Josh is just an explosive playmaker. I think obviously what he does in the run game is huge, but also the pass game. He's made some big plays in it. So he's a guy that he's always the outlet for me. I know when I get the ball down to him, he's gonna pick up a couple extra yards. And there are some times where it's on the sideline where he can catch a ball and get out of bounds and avoid some hits. But I'm never worried about that with Josh. I think he's a guy who's always looking for contact.
Did you have any idea how sick he was?
What was that?
Did you have any idea how sick he was heading into that game?
Man, I didn't. I think that's one of those things that Josh isn't going to come out and just be telling you. He doesn't want anybody to feel bad for him. But I think after the game we talked, and he definitely was going through it and struggling. But it's one of those things where you got to find a way, and he did that, and made it look pretty easy. It didn't look like he was very sick out there, but he was definitely going through it.
Is that pass to Jacobs over the middle, the 29-yarder, was that play designed to clear everybody out and go to him, or was he a check down there?
Yeah, he was a check down. That's a play we ran before where we're kind of running a four verts concept, and he's kind of the underneath check down. He's running a kind of a slant route, and I kind of started moving in the pocket and was able to find him late. But he's really a check down on that play.
Zach Tom really seemed to be fighting through it Sunday. What much of a difference does his presence make, even if he's not at 100%? Just what's it say about him that he was out there at all Sunday?
Yeah, no, it's huge. I think obviously, like I said before, you always want to have your best players out there. And sometimes guys are going through some things and battling through some injuries. And he's a warrior, he's a trooper. But it's great to have him out there. And I know he was hurting a couple times, but another guy who's just fighting through it. But it definitely makes a difference when you got your best guys out there.
As a group, you're one of the best units on third down in terms of conversion this year. What's been the key to that, and how do you keep that going when you go on the road?
Just executing, just understanding. I think going into the week, what are some of the tendencies these guys like to do on third downs, and going out there and kind of, obviously we're going to put a great game plan together for third downs, but it just comes down to executing. I always say it always starts up front. Third down is when pressure, usually likes to amp up a little bit more. So being able to handle all the different looks that teams bring, and obviously I think this week's going to be a big test because they're a pretty good team as well, present a lot of different looks. So it just comes down to execute and make plays.
Jordan, I know every road environment is different, and obviously you're playing different opponents, but what are some of those things that you found when it comes to a road game? If, hey, we do these things, that gives us a good chance to win.
Yeah, I think it always starts with the operation. On the road, obviously it's a much louder environment. We got to deal with crowd noise and things like that. So obviously going from, full cadence to silent cadence on the road games is it always starts there. Not having any pre-snap penalties and moving ourselves back behind the sticks is going to help us stay in these manageable situations and be able to execute more. But it always starts with the operation. I think it's definitely an area that we've got to keep cleaning up. We've had some mistakes and some things like some operation penalties and false starts, things like that. So it always starts there.
Arizona, more for Jordan. Arizona, there's always a lot of green and gold in the stands. Do you guys notice that at all, and does that make a difference for you?
Definitely. That's definitely something that, you notice in the game. You go into a, away environment and you love to see, all the green and gold, all the Packers jerseys out there and just the fans, showing that support on the road. So it definitely makes a difference. I remember the Seattle game last year, we're going into a, what's talked about as one of the, hardest, away environments. And I think by the second half, I'm hearing all these Go Pack Go chants and the place is just flooded with Packer fans. So, we love that. We definitely notice that. And, definitely want to keep, fans out there showing up to these away games because it makes a big difference.